have a genuine question. How can you be ultra rich, see this movie, and still be a bad person? Genuine question. I don't know about y'all, but I was a dark child. In hue and in humor, okay? And this was my favorite movie. Mind you, my favorite phrase as a child was, "That's what you get." I'm not gonna assume that everybody has seen this movie. So, here's a quick breakdown. Charles Dickens gave us this classic in the 1800s, and it was originally a book, so I'm gonna act like I'm reading the book, which is actually just a notebook, to break it down. Ebenezer Scrooge has money, okay? We're talking DJ Khaled getting stuck in the middle of the ocean, not worried money. He owns what's kind of like an accounting firm, and he has one employee, and he treats that employee like trash. Now, since this is based in London in the 1800s, and there is no heat in this property, this man uses one piece of coal to heat the entire property, so his employee is freezing all day. One day, these two gentlemen come in there, and they are from the poorhouse, and the poorhouse is what they used to call shelters back then. And they're like, "Would you like to give to the needy?" And Ebenezer Scrooge is like, "Are there no prisons? Are there no slop houses?" And the guy is like, "There are, but those people would rather die than be in prisons or slop houses." And Ebenezer looks him straight in the face and is like, "Well, then they better do that." Like, we've all been in a situation where we can't afford to donate to the Santa Claus in front of Macy's, but jeez! Whole time, his worker is extremely poor and is just happy to be alive on Christmas. And that worker specifically is excited about Big Ben going off at 4:45 because that means that he can leave and go home to his children. Now, here's the thing. Ebenezer don't care about that. Okay, he don't care about that. In fact, he's like, "Okay, I guess you want me to let you out early because it's Christmas Eve and tomorrow is Christmas, so you're not going to be working in. But the 26th, you better be here at 7:45. And the poor worker is like, "Yes, sir, not a problem at all." Now, the worker goes home to his two children and his wife. One kid is disabled. His name is Tiny Tim. Remember him. Now, they don't have much in this house. In fact, they barely got a Christmas goose. But what they do have is love. And that's something that Scrooge has not seen in years. We are then transitioned from Tiny Tim's house over to Scrooge's house. Scrooge's house, massive. Empty and massive. Imagine the Haunted Mansion in Disney World, but somebody actually living there. That's what Scrooge's house gave. Mind you, still only using one piece of coal for his entire home. The man is freezing. Chief tattering. The two teeth he has chattered the entire time. Now, since it's Christmas Eve, Scrooge decides to make himself a little dinner. The dinner looked terrible, by the way. And while he is eating, he hears somebody walking into his house. And this is when I leaned in. I'm thinking, oh, maybe Scrooge got a daughter. Maybe, no, everyone hates him. The noise stops. So he plays it off as like, oh, well, maybe it was just my hearing, maybe an undigested piece of potato or whatever. He gets ready for bed. Y'all, the noise starts again. And then the door starts to turn. As the door turns, you hear chains rattling. So not only is there a person, that person is chained up. Y'all, that door opens and it's his old partner, Jacob Marley. Now, this wouldn't be a problem if Jacob Marley hadn't died 7 years ago. Oh, I'm supposed to be reading. So Jacob Marley tells him, "Scrooge, you gotta calm down or you're gonna be right here with me." Scrooge is like, "Girl, what are you talking about? You don't even exist anymore. You're dead." Marley is like, "Oh, I'm dead." Marley passed from what looks like mumps, polio, something, because his whole jaw is wrapped up. Y'all, he take that damn thing off, whole jaw just falls on the floor. Girl! Oh, I'm supposed to be reading. In so many words, he tells him, "You have been living in a way that is so heinous and disrespectful to humanity that I'm afraid you'll join me if you were to die today. In fact, the chains that I have today were your chains 7 years ago, so you have even more baggage." So at this point, Scrooge is like, "But Jacob, I've always been a decent person and paid my bills." And he's like, "That literally doesn't matter. You're not listening to me." He tells Scrooge to go over to that window, and child, they peek up out that window, and all you see are souls that are just wailing and wishing that they could help people because they never helped people during their time on earth. Jacob tells him, "You're going to be visited by 3 ghosts tonight, okay? Past, present, and future. And if you don't get it together, you're going to be here with me. I can assure you that." Scrooge is so disheveled by this that he falls and hits his head, and he wakes up and he's like, "Oh, thank goodness it was just a dream." In fact, it wasn't, because the ghost of Christmas past visits him. The ghost of Christmas past takes Scrooge to his childhood home and his childhood school. And lo and behold, Scrooge was abused. Lo and behold, when he graduates from the orphanage, he meets a young lady and he falls in love with her. And he messes it up completely. He's overworking. He does not pay attention to her. And she says, I release you, Ebenezer, which in 1800 speak was, I'm breaking up with you. Did Scrooge learn from this? No, because he then starts to overwork and only care about money, which leads us to the present. Now, Scrooge is totally devastated by this memory. And if you thought the Ghost of Christmas Past cared, you got the wrong one, because she could not have cared less. But the next ghost laughs in his face, quite literally. We have a younger version of Santa Claus that comes as the Ghost from Christmas Present. And he shows us two very important scenes, one of which is his co-worker with his son, Tiny Tim. He learns that his co-worker is not doing great and Tiny Tim's health is declining every day. But his co-worker takes up for Scrooge when his family starts to drag him. And their jokes were good, but not as good as his family's jokes, because the Ghost of Christmas Present takes Scrooge over to his nephew's house and they are literally calling this man an animal. That family is in front of this fireplace and they are playing a guessing game. And the person is like, do we like it? And they're like, no. And they're like, is it okay to be around? They're like, no. They're like, do you want to use it? And they're like, kinda. And they're like, is it a donkey? And he's like, no, but kinda. And they're like, oh, I know. It's Uncle Scrooge. Baby, the scream I scrumped with the Ghost of Christmas Present, honey, weak. However, Scrooge doesn't find this funny because he's just trying to understand why everybody is dragging him for filth. But yet again, his nephew takes up for him, which he's one of one, he's number one, he's the only one, because everybody else is like, girl, we do not care about your uncle and he can go ahead and die so we can take this money. But the Ghost of Christmas Present, that's the girl that really drags him down to where he needs to be. Quite literally, because what she did was she showed him his tombstone and said, people don't even come and visit you. When you die, nobody will come and visit you because of how you treated people when you were here on earth. And in addition to me showing you that nobody's gonna care about you when you're gone, I also wanna show you that Tiny Tim, yeah, it's over for him. And now Scrooge is just looking and seeing how this has affected his coworker, and it gets to him. But it only gets to him because he then sees his body getting dragged to hell. As his body is almost partying with Beelzebub himself, he's like, okay, I'm gonna change. And then he wakes up. Now, personally, I wanted him to get checked in, but I guess we couldn't go that far, so all right. The next morning, he wakes up and it's Christmas morning. And he's like, oh my God, I am still alive. But there's something that's there that lets him know that stuff really happened to him last night. So he sees a little child running outside the street and he's like, hey, what day is it? And the child is like, it's Christmas. Why? He's like, go get me a goose. And the little kid's like, girl, please. He's like, if you give me a goose, I'll give you $16. Now, $16 to a child back then, a lot. He goes downstairs, he tips the maid. He goes to get the goose from the child. He gives the child his $16 because period. And he takes the goose to Tiny Tim's house. And he tells Tiny Tim and his parents, whatever you need for medical bills, I will take care of. His coworker shooketh to his core. Then he goes and he visits his nephew right as they were playing the game. And they're like, Uncle Scrooge, you came. And he's like, yeah, I know y'all hate me, but you know, I am family, so I'm hoping that y'all have me. Now, this is where the Lord is still working on me because I would have said no. But they let him in. So he ends up having a good little Christmas with his family and he ends up giving Tiny Tim everything that he needs so that he can survive. And he learns his lesson. So I just think maybe with recent news, other CEOs and billionaires could probably think about this story and think about the ghost that can come and visit them in the night and what they would say about that past, present, and that future. So, happy holidays!